On a cold, snowy January morning in 2022, a Boston police officer, John O'Keefe, was found lifeless in the front yard of a fellow Boston police officer. His body, battered and bruised, lay just outside the house where his girlfriend, Karen Reed, claimed she had dropped him off the night before. Now, years later, the courtroom is packed, the nation's eyes locked on the unfolding drama of Reed's retrial of the century. The prosecution says she ran him over with her SUV and left him in the snow and never looked back. The defense, however, tells a far darker tale of a cover-up involving law enforcement, planted evidence, and a powerful blue wall. Social media has now become a battleground with viral videos, heated protests, and TikTok sleuths igniting the public obsession. Every witness, every cross-examination adds fuel to the fire, and today, the jury returned to the scene of the crime. And tonight, we are live from the courthouse as the jury tries to figure out if this was a tragic accident, a calculated murder, or a twisted conspiracy. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Great to have you aboard. End of the first week in Dedham, Massachusetts in the Karen Reed retrial. Wow, big week it has been. And today was a really interesting day. Let's talk about the scene here. 34 Fairview. You hear that thrown around the courtroom all the time, and that is this home. That is in Canton, Massachusetts. A nice home. It was owned by Brian Albert, who was a Boston police officer like John O'Keefe, but didn't really know John O'Keefe before that night. John O'Keefe knew his brother, knew some other folks connected to Brian Albert, but did not know Brian Albert himself. As a matter of fact, he didn't know where 34 Fairview was. They had trouble getting there that night, Karen Reed and John O'Keefe. They drove past the house. They had to double back to finally get there. But this is the scene of the crime. Now, depending upon whose version of what happened to John O'Keefe you believe. Now, the defense believes that this house is the scene of the crime, like inside the house, because they say John O'Keefe went inside there on that snowy night. That's where he was attacked. That's where he was killed. And then he was placed out on the front yard. Where? By the flagpole, which is a big part of that front yard. That's like one of the things that marks the particular area that we're talking about. Everyone references that flagpole and the front yard. Now, the prosecution says the front yard is the scene of the crime because John O'Keefe never went inside. He was killed on the street and ran over by his girlfriend, Karen Reed, who backed into him going 26 miles an hour, knocked him down into the snow, and then just left him there. So the scene of the crime, you can look at the entire property, right? I think both sides agree anywhere in the entire property is where John O'Keefe died. But for prosecutors, it's the yard. And for the defense, it is the home, and then he is placed on the yard. Here's the interesting thing about the scene. I was there. I was there. Now, it's interesting when you look at the photos, and before I ever stepped foot on that street, before I ever saw the house, the flagpole, the front yard, I had seen pictures, I had seen videos. And the thing that struck me the most was it's not as large as it appears on video and on the images. Like the yard is a little more modest than I thought. Everything's a little bit closer. The flagpole is close to the street. The house, the front yard is not expansive. It's a decent, nice sized yard, but it's not a huge front yard. Everything's a little tighter, a little closer. That's the way I felt when I went there. And when I went there, I was like, wow, the street is right here. That's where his body was, that close to the street. That's what stuck with me. And I went, as you can see in this photo, I didn't go at night in a snowstorm. So obviously the conditions much different. But the conditions I went and visited there, similar to what was happening today when the jury was there, as today was the jury view. This is where the jury has an opportunity to visit the scene of the crime. And in this case, for prosecutors, they believe it's the yard, it's the street, it's the curb. That is where all this happened. Now, the point of a jury view is to give the jury some perspective when they see the photos, the videos, and they hear the testimony. You can put things together. I think it's amazing. Massachusetts, this is one of the things that they do right. Almost every trial I've ever covered out of Massachusetts, there's been a jury view where the jury has gone to the scene. And for me, covering it, it makes it make a lot more sense. But that's just me covering it. Like, the most important people are the 12 jurors. So for them to get an opportunity to go there is enormous. So let's bring in Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, who was outside the courthouse, but obviously today was on the road and was in the neighborhood and was at 34 Fairview. Matt, great to see you. Why don't you set the scene for us as to what was happening? I want to take some time here to really let the folks at home get an idea for what the jury did, what they saw, and what happened today. So set the scene for us.
And what we saw, we got up close and personal with what prosecutors are calling the murder weapon in all of this, Karen Reed's SUV, which was at 34 Fairview today. But I mean, this was a huge production today. It started off with the judge talking to the jury. We're going on a field trip, and then each side, the prosecutors and then the defense team, they got to say a little speech of what they wanted each of the jurors to look for and notice during the jury view. And then the bailiffs were sworn in. That was quite noteworthy. And they have these long poles that signify that the court's in session, even when they're on the road, almost like when children are on a field trip. So then they load up the bus in the back of the courthouse today, and it's a police escort that takes them to Fairview Road and 34 Fairview. It's you know, probably a dozen police officers. There you see the judge in street clothes. Defense attorney Little and Yannetti were there. The prosecutor, Hank Brennan, was there. Again, they shut down the road. The media was kept far away, about 100 feet back. And then we got a close-up look. And my producer, Grace Wong, and I noticed that in front of the house, which a lot of people are talking about online, is this rock that says Albert. And I've never seen it before. I've been to that house several times. I've been there doing stand-ups and also reporting on the case. I know you have too. And I have never seen a rock that says Albert right in front of the house. So that was noteworthy and a little bit strange. But another difference from last year's jury view to this year, last year they parked Karen Reed's SUV a little bit further down on the house, closer to the garage, the driveway. This year, it was right next to where they're saying was the point of impact, or at least they did in the first trial, and it was right next to that flagpole. We got a close-up look after the jury left. Take a look at this. Moments ago, the jury just exited the bus and they did a jury view here at 34 Fairview. This is the former Albert home. This is the flagpole that we hear about in court. And this is Karen Reed's SUV. All right, so part of the jury view involves seeing the SUV, which is the alleged murder weapon in all of this. Jurors were instructed to pay close attention to the bumper, to the light, and to the top of the car. They also took note of the flagpole right over here on 34 Fairview and the front of the house in relationship to the upstairs windows. So again, when the jury was there, I was about 100 feet away. I was trying to observe the best I could. I have 20/20. And I could see that the jurors really didn't leave the back of the SUV. Almost not at all. They were really focused on what's alleged as the murder weapon. Another thing of note, remember during all the pretrial hearings leading up to the trial, and we're in week one, there was a lot of arguments and trying to figure out how to get the defendant Karen Reed there, because obviously she wasn't going to be on the bus with everybody else. Well, at the end of the day, she chose for a second year in a row for the retrial not to be at the jury view. So, of course, when she left court today, we were all asking her that one question, why she didn't show up. Take a listen. Karen, what do you hope they noticed about the jury view?
Why not go on the view?
I don't ever want to go back to 34 Fairview.
What do you think about the text messages that they read out loud? Do you really care about
I have.
So again, a big change from a couple days ago when she was going to attend. Yesterday she told me that she wasn't planning on it, and today she made that decision. She held back along with Alan Jackson here at the courthouse before testimony resumed, but of course we know that it was a half day. But that was a big decision on the defense part today.
I'm looking at that rock. When I was there, I don't remember that rock either. Matt, it's bizarre because it's in an area where if I'm a juror and I'm looking at that rock, I'm thinking, oh, if he gets hit by the car, his head could hit that rock.
Yeah, you know, and it's not even where his body was, I believe. It was closer to the flagpole. And, you know, at first, when you see the paint on the rock, it says Albert. But you would think that if someone placed a rock there, that it would be a tribute to Officer O'Keefe, who lost his life, right? So there's really no explanation. I'm sure the jurors have questions tonight as well.
You know, the other thing when you go there, and then we're taking a closer look at that rock, it's strange. I don't understand why that's there. And that's always the one criticism of the jury view, is if things have changed drastically. Now, obviously, the weather today much different than it was that day, but I think the jury can understand that. But things like a rock on the front yard where they're claiming he died, to me, that's a big deal. I'd have to take a look at some of the video we shot previously there to see if that thing existed, whether it existed last year or any other time we've been there. But I don't recall seeing it, and you don't recall seeing it either.
I don't. Yeah, I don't, and I know that it's something that we would have talked about, we would have noticed. We were walking on the street, not on that property, when we were here last year. I don't remember seeing it. And then today, we were allowed to walk on the property. That was another big difference with all of this. And we were standing right where the jurors were, so at least one of the 18 had to have seen it.
Okay, now, while you're there, Matt Johnson being Matt Johnson, you're going to talk to as many people as possible, and you actually had an opportunity to speak to one of the neighbors?
Yeah, because this was a huge production, right? They stopped traffic. There was probably about a dozen troopers that were protecting the jury and blocking off the roadway in either direction. None of the neighbors could drive down the street, get to their driveway, get to their house, so they come out of their cars. Other people are walking their dogs, and they stop where we are, which is where all the media is. And then I start talking to this gentleman. He's by the name of Jim, and he starts telling me that he's lived there for 40 years. And he remembered that night of the snowstorm. And I started asking him questions about the neighborhood and his thoughts on the case. Take a listen.
It's bad news. She's definitely innocent. There's no question about it. When you look at his arm, a car couldn't do that to an arm. No way. All you got to do is look at his right arm. There's no way a vehicle would do that to an arm. Explain to me how it could happen. There's just no way. Even the plow driver said he came by at 2:30 and saw nothing. People leaving the party saw nothing. 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, they saw nothing. How can you not see a body lying near the flagpole?
Is there any animals in the area? Any big animals? Have you ever had any problems with pets being lost?
Friends of ours were bitten by Chloe. And in fact, they're on the witness list. I don't know if they're going to be called, but they are on the witness list. We know about them. And, I mean, the guy sells his house. He puts in a whole new basement floor. Suddenly, his cell phone is gone. Suddenly, Higgins' cell phone is gone. Come on. That's all innocent? No way.
Jim Malver, living on Fairview Road for more than 40 years, super nice guy. Only one lens in his glasses because he just had surgery, in case you're wondering. But I mean, he was the one that brought up Chloe. I didn't. I was trying to find out, you know, hey, you know, there's that other theory of maybe some other animal scratched John O'Keefe's arm when he lay lying on 34 Fairview. He brought up Chloe. I didn't.
Yeah, you're wondering, you know, is it one of those neighborhoods where you might have coyotes or whatever? That's fascinating. And by the way, I don't know if I can remember a trial where you just meet random people in the street and they know the facts of the case backwards and forwards. It's unreal. Okay. Let's talk about what else happened today. Obviously, this was a big, huge part of today, and we're going to dive more into it in the rest of this hour. But bring us up to speed as to what else happened today.
Okay, so there was two witnesses. One talked about how they calculated the blood alcohol level, but it really didn't resonate with the jury. They looked really confused because they didn't translate as to how drunk she allegedly was at the blood draw or when they got that. So I bet you that's going to be explained next week. But the other person that took the stand, of note, a big witness, this was the EMT person, the paramedic that responded to the Section 12, which is basically a suicide watch. Remember Karen Reed's family was concerned about her after all the chaos. She was screaming, she needed consoling. Well, she's taken to the hospital, and this guy talks to her, and during all of that time when he's interviewing her, she starts saying that she is John O'Keefe's wife. She's trying to get updates on his situation that way. And then also, she keeps on talking about the last communication that she's had with John O'Keefe and talking about their big fight. Listen to this.
One of the reasons why she was saying suicidal stuff is because the last conversation she had with her husband at the time was an argument.
Were you also made aware, did she tell you that her last words to him were in voicemails? Did she say that?
She didn't give any details.
Did you ask her, what were your last words to him?
I did not.
Now, Vinnie, again, you've been in the courtroom, very tiny, and the members of the media, I had a ticket this week, are right behind the O'Keefe family. They face the jury. I'm looking straight on to the jury members, and they are really paying attention to this guy, and they're taking a lot of notes during that statement that he made right there. One just has to say, you know, that was a powerful way to end week one. That's exactly what the jury is thinking about as they head into the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge day, but every day there's been something big, and it's important, obviously, to both sides of this. But there is, to me, like a different rhythm to this trial. It's moving. I feel like it's moving a little quicker, and it's just sharper, right? And I think it's from both sides. I don't feel like anything is lingering or not malingering, but lingering the way it sort of did the first time around. But yeah, the jury has to pay attention. They've got to figure this out, because the first jury did not figure it all out.
Yeah, you're right. There was a mistrial, but to your point, I mean, I think that, you know, when you're here, I know that you're going to take the show on the road, when you're in the courtroom, it plays out so much different than it feels when you're watching it on TV. And the rhythm is really Hank Brennan. I mean, he is doing short Q&A with the witness on the stand. There's also a shorter cross for these witnesses that we've seen so far. But it's those video clips of Karen Reed and her own statements, and you really dove into that last night, remember? But hearing Karen Reed, and there's no context to it, but she's making these statements, that's what's really changing this trial.
Yeah, yeah, and the jury locked in on those, absolutely locked in, because that's the defendant. This is the accused. This is the accused murderer. Matt Johnson, big first week. Rest up this weekend. Rest up. Maybe if the Sox are in town, head over to Fenway. All right?
Okay.
There we go.
Put it on your credit card.
There you go. Perfect. Matt Johnson. Thank you so much. All right, folks, when we come back, we'll bring in our trial insiders, and we're going to go another level deeper into that jury view and the scene, what it means for both sides of this, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, we take a close look at the communications between John O'Keefe and Karen Reed in the hours leading up to John's death. We investigate every text message, every phone call. What do they reveal?
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
You told police you shot him twice in the head.
I could have killed everybody in that building, and I didn't.
You think you should get some kind of credit for not killing people?
Interview with a Killer. New episode, Sunday at 8 on Court TV.
Future.
I ask you just to pay attention to the street, the front yard of the home, and you'll see to the left side of the front yard in the corner, there'll be a car. It's the Lexus that we've spoken about, the defendant's Lexus. And you'll also see a flagpole and a fire hydrant. And so I'd ask you to take a look from different vantage points. Take a look from that area where the flagpole is, from where the fire hydrant is. And you'll see on the street before the grass is a little berm, concrete that comes up a little bit. I'd ask you just to note that when you go there.
All right, that's Hank Brennan giving some instructions to the jury before the jury view, telling them from his perspective what I want you to sort of make sure you pay attention to and take a look at when the bus full of jurors heads down to 34 Fairview. Okay, let's bring in our Karen Reed trial insiders, criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr., trial attorney Wayne Dennison, Karen Reed supporter Nick Rocco, and YouTuber and author of the book Storm of Suspicion, The Karen Reed Trials, plural, Kevin Lenahan with us. Great to have everyone here. Joseph, I will say this. You know, sometimes I attack the way you guys do things in Massachusetts. This is what you do right. You let the jury go to the scene. And I've seen it in almost every trial I've covered out of Boston, the jury going to view. They don't do it all around the country, but they do it in Massachusetts. So what do you think? Hank Brennan telling them to pay attention to the Lexus and the street and the flagpole. What does he want them looking at? What is the significance for prosecutors of having the jury go there?
So, yeah, first of all, we do a lot of things right up here, Vinny, but the view, a little interesting to me. It was the defense that wanted the Lexus parked at the scene. And in a trial hearing, Hank Brennan said that he was concerned it would be too prejudicial, but if the defense wanted it, he was not going to object, and he acquiesced. It's a psychological phenomenon that there's something called associative learning. That jury now is going to connect that Lexus to 34 Fairview. And it was good reporting by Matt Johnson, for the most part. I do have one criticism of him. But for him to focus in on the jurors who were really, really focused in on the rear part of Karen's Lexus motor vehicle. And one other thing that Hank Brennan had said to the judge today, or to the jury, was, look, you're going to go see it, make observations, you're going to have a chance to view the house and view the motor vehicle, but keep in mind, this is going to be a 75-degree afternoon, it's clear, it's at noontime. The time of this occurrence was during a blizzard. It was January 29th. It was dark. It was cold. It was snowing. The one thing I would have liked Matt to do, first of all, that rock has never been there. I wish he had knocked on the door at 34 Fairview and asked who had put that there. It seems like a shameless attempt to connect the Albert still to that house. Also, rather than focusing on Mulver, I would have liked to have Matt knocked on some of those doors. There's a lot made about Brian Albert not coming out of his house. There are 6 to 8 houses, all in close proximity to that scene. 2 of the houses are just as close as 34 to where the emergency vehicles were, and not a single person came out of any of those houses that night.
Nick, reaction to Joseph Krowski.
Well, that's not true. I mean, the family next door that Matt McCabe referred to as the Asian home, they actually have pictures from like 6 in the morning of all the ambulance outside. So there were people that did wake up, and it was the neighbor's house. And as far as that rock, I mean, that is a shameless move on either side. I honestly can't believe that when the jury came off the bus, nobody had any idea why it was there or why it wasn't moved. I mean, I'm not sure why the court officers wouldn't have moved something like that. And conveniently enough, her car was parked. Her right taillight was parked right next to that rock. I'm not sure how they determined where they're going to take it off the tow truck and just leave it, because obviously the first time it was near the driveway. Now it's closer to the flagpole. Also, with the taillight housing being out of the vehicle completely, the jury's going to have to imagine the picture that they got shown and matching it up to being there, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's gonna be interesting on their take.
So what you're saying, Nick, is that the way the taillight appeared today is not the way it was photographed in the Sally Port.
Well, obviously, yeah, because they took the whole housing out, and Hank Brennan did let them know that they took the housing out, but they're going to have to envision what it looked like. Okay,
all right, Wayne Dennison, this view, Hank Brennan pointing out the street, the yard, the left side of the Lexus, the flagpole, the hydrant as well. What is the jury taking away from seeing where the hydrant is, where the flagpole is, and where the Lexus is?
Ultimately, both sides are going to try to link up what the jury saw at the view today to the testimony going forward. The issue that I have, and quite frankly, if I were Hank Brennan, I would not have been thrilled to bring these folks out on a beautiful spring day in Greater Boston and look at how close the proximity was of the house to the area in which John O'Keefe was allegedly struck. There is also close proximity to the road that's going to relate to the defense case with respect to the snowplow driver. I'm not sure that this benefited the prosecution very much. And quite frankly, where the Lexus was parked, it begins to beggar the imagination as to how she gets to 24 miles an hour going backwards.
Kevin, how can prosecutors take this view, or how do you suspect they will take this jury view and link it to their theory of the case and paint a picture of murder for this jury?
Well, I wanted to bring up something that nobody has brought up here that grabbed my attention immediately, and I want to see. We'll have to wait for the accident reconstruction of the explanation. But Hank Brennan brought up, he didn't use this word, but what it's called is a spoiler, and it's kind of like a shield on the roof, right below the top of the roof on the back. And I remember looking at these things on SUVs last year and trying to say, could this have somehow played a role in creating the gash on the back of the head? I'm not, and he pointed the jury to look at that. So is it possible that their theory is going to be that the head was struck there and additionally struck the ground that caused the bulk of the brain injury? I don't know, but
how high off the ground is that spoiler? Do we know?
It would be about the size of a 6'2" man. It matches very closely. I'm 6'2" myself, and my elbow matches up perfectly to where that taillight is. Perfectly. And the dent on the rear panel matches perfectly to a forearm's length away of a 6'2" man to where his hand would be that presumably struck that rear panel. But this is the first time I've heard anything from the state involving that spoiler on the top there. So I find that to be very interesting. The defense tried to note how close the window is on the second floor.
Well, we're going to get to the defense. I want to focus on prosecution here. We have another whole segment for you guys talking about the defense. We're going to split it up beautifully. Nick, your thoughts about the spoiler?
I mean, so now what you're basically saying is that John O'Keefe just stood there while Karen Reed backed up 62 feet, standing there perfectly, that only his elbow and the back of his head gets struck by that vehicle. I mean, there's no
words in my mouth. I
couldn't see that happening. But that's what you would be implying, because did he not see the vehicle coming back and he was there?
No, you're reacting quickly in the moment when something is coming towards you, and I think the state's theory is going to be he reacted, took a defensive position, and the taillight struck the elbow and pushed through, so that there was a fraction of a second where the taillight, and so the SUV was in contact with the elbow and the torso, because the torso was connected to the elbow, and the torso was shielded from the elbow, and the car is going through it, never hit the brakes during this period, so the arm would have still snapped back and hit the panel. And by the way, Nick, the Celtics are up 10 at halftime. Figured I'd tell you that.
So,
but what you're saying is he just stood there because the vehicle had to have driven backwards. If he got out of the vehicle, there was enough time for Karen to drive forwards, throw the car in reverse, and back up. Why was he still standing perfectly in the one spot that would only strike him on that side of the body.
There's no reason that he wasn't standing there hailing a cab. At some point, he presumably shifted, twisted, moved.
So, can I have a minute here?
Go ahead, Joseph.
Vinny, again, the thing that is helpful for the prosecution is essentially they were allowed to stage the scene. And I heard Wayne's comments, but as just pointed out, there is evidence from the forensic data that was elicited from the motor vehicle that the car drove forward first. I don't think John O'Keefe had any pre-warning or prior warning that the car was going to back up. So, look, it's not completely precise. We don't know where he was facing, if he turned around at the last minute or if he was moving. But one point that was glossed over too quickly is that first responder today put before that jury that Karen's own statement was the last conversation between the two of them, which would be at 34 Fairview in that car, was an argument. That came in unequivocally, unambiguously. That's how the Friday ended.
So, Wayne, our understanding is that it's 6 feet 1 inches tall is the SUV. Your thoughts about how that plays? It seems the jury spent a lot of time looking at the SUV. Do the pieces fit together for them? The damage, the injuries, the spoiler, the panel, the tail light, all of that?
They may fit together for them ultimately, but the notion that you can sort of evolve your theory of how he was struck as a prosecution after the case has already been tried once and after the witnesses have already been testified once, the notion that you have an evolving theory today that somehow the spoiler is now, one of the impacts. First of all, there's no evidence that the spoiler is damaged in any way. And second of all, it's inconsistent with what the previous testimony was. I don't know. I don't see how it helps.
Kevin, go ahead, jump in. We lost Nick for a second.
Oh, yeah, that's a very good point. And I had thought of that too. But, the object of a trial and the object of an investigation is to get to the truth. And you seek the truth, whether that comes between the first and the second trial and the second and third trial. Yes, it will cause a problem, especially if Trooper Paul testifies. He never mentioned anything about the spoiler. But, again, seek the truth. And the evidence is getting more and more focused in this second trial. And I think as Joe successfully pointed out, this really was a bad day for the defense because of the way it ended and continued the defense has to do to try to take apart working well.
Joseph, and Kevin brings up a great point, right? The search for the truth, that's the point of the trial. How much does a jury view help the jury get to the truth?
I don't know of a case where the view made was the ultimate deciding factor. I don't think you win a case or lose a case
I'm not talking about winning and losing. I'm just talking about the truth.
Well, it speaks for itself, right? The view is what the view is. It's not subject to any frailties. It can't be shaped or colored by the presentation of either side. So it is what it is. But again, as far as a search for the truth, this does happen in prosecutions. They're not necessarily changing the theory. The theory has always been that Karen Reed struck John O'Keefe with the car. But with evolving technologies in retooling the prosecution, they've got a professional expert now who has better technology. We see it with DNA. We see it with fingerprints. We see it with all kinds of other evidentiary issues in retrials. It's an advantage that the Commonwealth has. And I've said it over and over again, on a retrial, advantage always goes to the Commonwealth.
All right, our guests are staying with us. We're going to reconnect with Nick Rocco when we come back. We're going to take a listen to what the defense wanted the jury to pay attention to at the scene, and we'll break it down with our insiders.
When we get to 34 Fairview, we will be pointing out certain things that we'd like you to observe. The house, second floor window to that house, the 3 front doors in the front of the house, the driveway, the street, the front lawn, in the flagpole. And we'll be asking you specifically to consider the distance between that second floor front window and the front lawn. The distance between the front doors to the house and that front lawn. The distance between the driveway to the front lawn. And we'll be asking you to take a good look at that Lexus. To stand next to it. To size it up.
David Yannetti, one of the attorneys for Karen Reed, a little more specific than Prosecutor Hank Brennan in directing this jury to pay attention to certain things at the scene during the jury view. Our Karen Reed insider still with us, Joseph Krowski Jr., Wayne Dennison, Nick Rocco is joining us on the phone, and Kevin Lenahan with us as well. Nick, I'll start with you on the phone. The second floor window and where it is, what's the significance of that for the defense? And what observations did you make when you were there at 34 Fairview, talking about the distances that David Yannetti was talking about?
Yeah, so, I mean, when that front yard is, you've seen in pictures or videos, it definitely looks stretched out and longer. The distance from the door to the front street, I would say it's maybe 30 feet, and from the flagpole, 45 to 50 feet. So the significance of the window is that was Brian Albert's window. That was apparently where he was sleeping through all of this noise and lights outside while he had Chloe inside of his room, you know, that wasn't making any noise. And if he had just looked outside that window for any slight reason, he would see what was going on. He had women outside screaming, trying to bring John back to life. There's just no way that he wouldn't have heard that. And I think obviously that's the significance of why he wanted them to look up at the window to where the flagpole was.
Kevin, does that strike you as kind of odd that the window is Brian Albert's window is the closest window to when you look at the front of the house, because it's a somewhat long house, but that's the closest to where all the action is that morning, yet never at any moment does Brian Albert see or hear anything, neither does his dog.
Boy, it sure struck me as odd 2 years ago when I was first looking into this. And this was a powerful piece of evidence that when I talked about it with other people, like, yeah, wow. The distance from where John was found to the door, which is not far below the window, was measured at 72 feet. What we have to understand is that all those vehicles came in without sirens, as they do in residential dark areas of Massachusetts, and that's proved in the dash cam video. The wind was howling. You couldn't hear things unless you were right next to people. That was the testimony. Karen Reed's parents got 3 phone calls from Karen Reed during the middle of the night. They didn't answer or wake up to any of them. Okay, so people were sleeping very heavily here. The Alberts, it was dark out there. It's the winter. The storm windows are up. They're sound asleep. They've been up late the night before. It just isn't the big thing that we think it is. And most importantly, you match up evidence like that, which I don't dismiss things like that, but you're talking about something that somebody didn't see or didn't do, such as wake up, matched against the evidence we're going to see later that is bulletproof, that matches that Lexus to what happened to John.
Wayne Dennison, your thoughts. The defense really zeroing in, honing in on the distances, the distance from where John O'Keefe was found to the front yard, to the driveway, to the street, from the second floor window. What story will those distances, do you believe, tell to this jury?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, David Yannetti must have said the word distance a half a dozen times. And the reason he's doing that is because you will see that all of this stuff is in very close proximity to both the house and to the road. And frankly, I think this distance testimony is going to be very interesting in terms of both people who were in the house, but also with respect to the snowplow and the snowplow driver, and the notion that if he didn't see somebody on a lawn, you can conclude there might not have been somebody on the lawn. And I think the distance focus was entirely correct by Mr. Yannetti.
Joseph, are you troubled at all by all the people that were in and out of the house that night, people coming to pick people up, snowplow drivers, etc., and no one saw the alleged murder and no one saw the victim?
Well, if you're going to ask if I'm troubled by the fact that no one saw the murder, doesn't that really cut more against the defense? You're going to lure John O'Keefe to your house, 2 officers, Higgins and Albert, to murder him when your house is full of civilians that are having a birthday party for your son. No, it doesn't bother me that they didn't see him. Given the conditions of the night, I don't think you would expect someone to see someone in the dark, pitch black, in an unlit area that was in a supine position on the ground while it was snowing. And again, it looks by the view, by their emphasis on the distances, that they are going to lean heavy into the theory that Brian Albert was in on this conspiracy. But you really got to ask yourself, Vinny, so you murdered John O'Keefe in your house, and your plan is to stage it out front so that, lo and behold, you can blame someone else for hitting him. And what a coincidence of all coincidences, on that same exact night, Karen Reed's Lexus just so happened to back up 60 feet at the exact same spot where the GPS on John O'Keefe's phone puts him. And she also happens to damage or crack open her taillight at Meadows. I mean, you've got to play Mega Millions if that's what you were banking on happening.
You'd have to win a lottery. Nick Rocco,
Absolutely.
Nick, what's your response to that?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, nobody, not one person, put John O'Keefe on the lawn. They didn't find any red pieces of taillight until after they seized Karen Reed's vehicle. When they did find the taillight, it was in 2 feet of snow. I mean, after so many coincidences, it's not a coincidence anymore. So the jury's going to have to look at this. Obviously, we have a lot more witnesses that have to be put on the stand. They may not understand what that top window means, but eventually, obviously, when the defense crosses Brian Albert, they're going to find out why the defense has been doing what they're doing. So we'll have to wait to see what happens.
All right.
I mean, Monday is going to be an interesting day, too.
We're out of time for tonight. Big thank you to everyone. Nick Rocco, Joseph Krowski Jr., Wayne Dennison, and Kevin Lenahan. We'll see you again, and I'll see you in person in a couple weeks up there in Massachusetts. Thanks so much, guys. When we come back, I'll reveal something else you need to know tonight.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, coming up next, only on Court TV.
Does Karen Reed a killer girlfriend?
She's guilty.
Or the scapegoat in an elaborate cover-up?
Karen Reed was framed! We know who did it.
The Karen Reed Murder Retrial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board. What do we have? Oh, there she is, Lori Daybell, post-conviction interview. She said she was surprised she was convicted. True Crime Arizona sat down for that interview with her, and she tells them that Tylee Ryan, her daughter, killed herself. I understand Tylee is in heaven. I know what she's doing, and I know where she is. It's been almost 6 years since she passed away. I mean, this is the catalyst, right? What happened between her and Charles was the catalyst of her killing herself. I was precluded from talking about that. I was precluded from bringing that up. You didn't testify. Anyway, take a look at your screens. We have a missing child, ladies and gentlemen, who needs your help tonight. This is Brynlee Gracyn Qualls. Brynlee is just 15 years old. She's missing out of Gilbert, Arizona. If you see her, call 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or the Gilbert Police Department in Arizona. Don't go anywhere. We've got another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.